Hi everybody, I think we are now live on Facebook. Welcome to the last of our Tech Week Tech Talks. We are joined by Paul, who I will introduce in a moment. I just wanted to remind you that this week has been brought to you by the Southeast Creators Programme that Creative Folkestone are working with. I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end, and also about some stuff that's happening from next week onwards. During the talk, if you're on Facebook, please do comment on the Facebook at the bottom, let us know you're watching, and also ask us any questions. We have a few people who've joined us on the Zoom meeting. They're also welcome to either type questions into the chat, and those people on the Zoom meeting will bring in at the end the question and answer if they want to come in and ask Paul some questions. Right, so swiftly I'm going to move on to Paul so we can get on with his talk. So welcome to Paul. I hope everybody enjoys your talk. I'm sure I'm looking forward to it. Photography is, as you know, one of my loves, so I'm very much looking forward to today. And so yeah, Paul, welcome, and I shall turn off my video and mute myself so that you can.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much, Karen. Hi, everybody. As Karen said, I'm Paul Cochran. I'm a photographer and videographer. I'm working here in my studio in the Glassworks in Folkestone. I was going to be at home today, but I've got an 8-year-old child, 5-year-old, and a little puppy who wouldn't sign model releases. So I'm here today. And I'm going to talk to you about my own photography, which is obviously different for every photographer. We all do different work. We work in different ways, shoot different things, but hopefully it's interesting for you guys anyway. I've got a disclaimer here now. Obviously, I'm usually on the other side of the camera, so this is not my natural habitat, so bear with me, and you have been warned. Just turn my phone on to airplane mode, rookie mistake. Yes, but first things first, because I'm a professional photographer and my job is to make the most of what I've got to improve an image, to set a scene, to create an environment. I think that this sort of the Zoom aesthetic that we've all come to know and love over the past few months needs a bit of rectifying. So if you just give me 1 sec, I'm just going to change it up slightly. Right. I don't know if you can see me or not, but this feels a little bit more like what I feel I should be, or how I should be portraying myself. So this, I think, fits more for what I want to do. And I feel like I can begin now. So yeah, I'm a professional photographer, freelance. I've been working now for over 10 years. The world's changed a lot since then. I work for a range of clients. I work a lot for people in education, design agencies, charities, theatre companies. I've got corporate clients as well. But I think the easiest thing to do is to show you some of my work. Yeah, so working with people like Guildhall since they rebrand, shooting all sorts of marketing material around campus in central London. And then this is some work that I did for a German charity in India. Spent 3 weeks in an HIV clinic, shooting what's going on in the hospital, as well as the outreach work that they do in the local community, which is really, really amazing, really interesting work. Just trying to give you some time to look at the images. Then this is a little bit closer to home. This is where I come from. This is Blackpool. This is the annual get-together, the largest in Europe, of pigeon fanciers and pigeon racers and pigeon breeders, which is a pretty typical English, if not Northern European thing. So obviously some great characters. And an amazing venue, this Victorian Winter Gardens with a you know, thousands of cages underneath, and this jaunty chap with his prize-winning bird. This was some work I did for Liberty Fabrics. Yeah, so that's just a little snapshot. Took a bit longer than I wanted it to take. Are we back to normal screen now? I hope so. I think so.
Yes, you are.
Cheers, Karen. Need my hand holding. Yeah, just going to revert to my notes. Yes, I want to talk about how my work has changed over the years. And so, as you can see in those images, my work is about people. There's often a reportage style there. There's sort of real world settings, but obviously not for the sort of studio-based shots that you saw there, but for the other types of images on location and stuff. There might be spontaneity there, but there's steps I need to take to control the environment. So it might be lighting, it might be scoping out the location, so I can be in the right place to get the shot ahead of time. And this is the skill. This is the hard bit. This is what my clients ask me to do. This is why they get me in to do it. Also, if you're taking pictures of people, real people who don't have their portrait taken or another image taken every day, then it's obviously important to sort of strike up a relationship with them in a pretty short space of time. You know, you're always working against the deadline, you've limited time with people. So to bring out the best in them, you need to be able to make them feel relaxed, but without telling them to relax. You know, telling someone to relax is guaranteed to stiffen them up. So there's a delicate balance there. There's things you have to do as a relationship you need to have with people. And that's kind of a nutshell, very small window into what I do, how I do it, and what's involved in my work. Now, what I thought was that because, sorry, we were going to have the open studios here in Folkestone around about this time, but obviously because of Corona and stuff, that's not happening. So I thought in lieu of that, I might do a sort of show and tell to show you what I would take with me on a typical sort of reportage style shoot, like you've just seen some of those images, that type of thing, and what I would use to capture that type of image. And I think it's worth saying that this type of gear that I would use hasn't really changed in the last 10 years since I've started. This has been quite consistent. Obviously, cameras and lenses might change, but essentially the type of things I would take would be the same. So if my camera bag is here, yes, it is. I'll just get that out. Just angle the camera slightly. You can see that. And then a little bit of angle there for you. Stand by laptop. So, first of all, you can see, I think you can see in there from what I can tell. Nothing like a show and tell. So, I shoot Canon. There's a Canon 5D Mark IV there, and what I would use with that would be a spare body, a backup, which is shooting the live feed of the video now, and there's also an ultra wide, like a 16 to 35 mil lens on there, and that's one of the three main lenses that I would use. So that's going to be good when you're not streaming. It's going to be good for sort of architectural shots or landscapes. And then you have the 24 to 70, which is a nice mid-range lens, which is a good all-rounder. Then there's the 70 to 200 millimeter lens. This is the long lens, telescopic. And that's nice if you want to keep a bit of distance between you and the subject, shoot a little bit more unobtrusively, but also be able to focus in and capture a moment and not get too many exterior artifacts in the shot. There's other bits and bobs in here. There's maybe a little prime in here and a macro lens, which comes in handy. Obviously, memory cards, card reader, batteries, all sorts of batteries for cameras and other bits and bobs. Leatherman, always going to help you out of a bind. Camera batteries. And then there are little nano stands like this, which are nice and portable, packed down really small. And I would team that up with some flashes. And also to remove it from my camera itself, I'd have some remote triggers and maybe even a softbox, which is going to create a light kind of like what's being created on me now. This is a softbox, a larger softbox that I might not take on location, but this one is nice and portable and it can just give a nice spread of light on a subject if you're shooting a portrait, or you could dot these flashes around the room and have multiple flashes synchronizing when you're shooting. And if you're shooting in a sort of real world environment, you don't always get beautiful, well lit subjects, and you may not want to move them around. So I need to be responding to the situation and moving the lights around to make it work to create the image that I want. And it's a nice way of adding light or adding shape and sculpting things a little bit. What else? There's a gray card here for getting your color balance, getting your white balance, so that you have you can fix the colors, because if particularly if you're shooting on location and you aren't in control of the available light, then you don't know what it's doing. You don't know, and it just helps you to mitigate the risk of having weird colors when you get into post. There's other things, tripod bases, so you could attach your camera to a tripod. I wouldn't normally take a tripod with me unless I knew that I needed to. Working like this, I try to save weight and take as a minimal amount of kit as possible. Obviously, the most important thing being the camera and the ability to have a backup in the worst case scenario. And there's other bits and bobs. There's also a reflector. You know, it's a simple piece of kit, but it does a lot. Just if you're not going to use a flash or it's not appropriate, and if you have the ability or an assistant to make that work, then you can bounce up some light and get rid of some shadows. I think it's worth saying that some of these tips and tricks you can do without having to use professional equipment. I had some silver lame fabric that I found in a fabric store recently, and it's like dirt cheap, and it does pretty much the same job. And when I've been teaching PhD students at the LSE or leading workshops with them, we've been trying to give them the means to improve their documentary work for their research, and by employing these sort of accessible means, you can help people to improve their photography. So the idea there is just that you can do a lot with very little if you need to. So that was stills. That's kind of my classic kit. And now I'd also like to show you what I would need if I was doing a similar kind of shoot, but if video was involved, because obviously over the last 10 years, the cameras that I use, the DSLRs, they are obviously capable of shooting really high quality video now, and it's become expected of me to be able to use them for that purpose. So that's obviously meant I've had an excuse to buy new kit. Not just the fun thing of buying kit, but it's the cameras themselves, whilst they're capable of shooting these amazing images, to make the most of it, you kind of need to supplement that. You need to add to it to help out your footage. And I can demonstrate that or show you how. With camera movement, if I'm moving image, then just to go handheld, you're not really going to have much success unless you're looking for a sort of jerky aesthetic. So you might want to have a tripod, and this is quite a nifty little piece of kit. It's a slider, so the tripod head would go on here and the camera on top of that, and this could either sit on a table and be used to smoothly control your camera's movement to give you nice, silky smooth gliding shots, or you can put this onto the tripod and work like that, and then you can add height and different angles and do more stuff with it. In addition to that, if you wanted even more movement, you would, or I would use, like a little gimbal here, which is like a motor controlled stabilizer. So the camera is just gliding through the scene. It's great for chasing children or small animals, or getting nice gliding shots through an environment, or something that's going on and you want to capture some atmosphere and just movement and make the most of what the camera can do. So that's movement covered. Obviously, moving image brings along with it sound, and I've got a radio mic attached to me today. You might also want to use a little shotgun mic, either on the end of a boom if you want it out of shot, ideally, or on the camera if you wanted to improve the sound that goes into the camera directly, because they do record sound, but I don't find it's that reliable sometimes, and it's just nice to help it out if you have multiple cameras in post-production that you want to sync the sound that's been created on them. So with that, you'd also need an audio recording device like a mixer and something to capture multiple sources of audio, and that is obviously being used with the camera to do the live stream now. Headphones to play back and to listen to the audio of your recording. Lots of stands. This is not really representative of the amount of cables that I have to live with. This is a small bag of cables, but cables are obviously key for connecting everything and relying on backup cables, USB cables, audio cables, XLR cables. It's all key. LED lighting. This is really nice, lightweight light that doesn't heat up. It's easy to transport around. This is bendy and waterproof. Super convenient. Again, more batteries in here. A whole load of batteries. There'd be some more lenses I would use. Oh, of course, most important thing, I do use a different camera when I'm shooting video work. I would not use the Mark III. That's my backup stills camera. My backup video camera would be my first stills camera, the 5D Mark IV, and this Panasonic GH5 would be the camera that I would get the sort of A camera results from. I'm a Canon shooter, and I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with this camera, but it does the job, so I'm happy to use it at the moment. Circular polarizing lens. When you've got too much light, it can happen, obviously, and you want to be able to open up your aperture. You might need to use a neutral density filter to reduce the amount of light going into your camera. That there enables you to open up your aperture and gives you more creative possibilities, like having a shallower depth of field. So it's all about control. What else is in here? Batteries, cables, and all sorts. And I suppose finally, a monitor. Just a monitor for reviewing footage, making sure you're staying in focus as you are shooting. That's essentially it. There's obviously lots of little bit of grippy kit, even more batteries, more microphones, backup microphones, more power supplies, and yes, so this is also, it's a lot bigger, a lot heavier. It will be that kit mixed with that. So this still work, the still equipment would decant into that to become what I would use for a video shoot. Which, yeah, it is portable. You can obviously take more gear. That's kind of my bare minimum. But it'll do the job. So what else do I want to say? Yeah, so basically what I'm talking about is the changing role of the photographer. And I think video is obviously it's been the big change in photography since the actual advent of digital photography itself. And since we've moved over to shooting still and moving image, you then obviously have to deal with the content you've created once you've finished your shoot. And then that means that as a photographer, as a videographer, I then need to edit the audio and the video in things like Adobe Premiere or DaVinci Resolve, syncing up audio, fixing audio, creating motion graphics. There's just a whole raft of new responsibilities, new opportunities, new things that have come into my sort of workflow and what I'm expected to do and what I offer to clients, which is a great thing. More is more. And on that note, I'd like to show you some video, which we did test beforehand, and it will work, he says. So, okay, so that was some of the type of things that I've been doing over the years. And obviously, I wanted to say that the benefit for clients with the sort of stills cameras being able to shoot moving image is that you're going to get a sort of consistency in what you're shooting, which is a big plus for clients because they're going to be able to come to you for the same look and feel over multiple different media types. And given the fact that everyone's using smartphones and content intake and content consumption is just up now, the expectation is that brands and people will be producing regularly more and more content, be it still or moving or both. Yeah, so that's kind of a plus for using one person that can do both of those things. And obviously, tech moves ahead. You need to stick with it. You need to move along with it, do more, work quicker. And I think the pace of production, certainly over the 10 years since I've been shooting, has increased massively. The sort of turnaround time for work has gone right down with the speed of internet connections, USB connections, cloud computing, and all that sort of thing, cloud storage. So when I was starting out, that 10 or so years ago, I would shoot, go home, offload my images with a USB 2 speed card, very slow. I would edit, burn a DVD or 2 or 3 or whatever, which takes, I remember it taking a long time. It seems to take a long time from what I can remember. And then you want to check that the DVD has burnt successfully. And finally, you'd have to post it out to your clients, and then they would receive it in a few days. Obviously, things are massively different now. And I can be shooting and my client can be reviewing images in real time on an iPad at the other end of the room. Or there may be an expectation that I offload images and upload them remotely whilst still on site. So if there's something that has to get out straight away, then that's all within the realms of possibility, and it's the norm, really. So I think going forward, this is increasing even more so with setups like this. Live streaming, so content going out live is a possibility for photographers with this sort of equipment or something similar. And I think that lately the demand for my kind of still photography has obviously gone down with everything that's going on in coronavirus. But for me, being able to offer those other things like editing, editing supplied footage from people who filmed it at home, that people's customers understand that you're going to have webcam footage being used in broadcast messages, but they're okay with that. But somebody like me can put it together and hopefully maybe make the most out of it to sort of bring out a positive message that people want to communicate. So I'm grateful for the fact that I can do that. There is something I can do during these times. And then going forward with things like this, with Zoom or with live streaming, I think that's one of the big positives. I think everyone can agree, that we are doing more of this, and I don't necessarily think the demand for that is going to go down anytime soon, even if there's big changes in the way we are, communicating. And if we can all go out, I think there'll be the facility for this has been recognized and as a positive, and people will want it and expect it. So I think that as things go forward, people should start to expect more from live streaming of music events or theatre or even lectures or whatever. And I think that you could have multiple cameras, better audio, better lighting, and take small steps like that to make big improvements, which ultimately for the photographer's client will make an impact for the people that they're trying to communicate with. And so that's kind of where I'm going to end, because that is where I see things going, or could potentially go. And I feel it's quite exciting. One good thing, nice to end on a positive note, given what's going on in the world today. So
Thank you very much.
Kind of it.
It's great. Thank you, Paul. I can see that we've got a question come through on the chat from Nathan. I don't know whether Nathan wants to actually ask that himself through audio. If so, just pop your audio on. Otherwise, I shall read that out. So I'll read that out to you. It says, do you find that clients have too high an expectation for an individual photographer or filmmaker now? They assume that photos and film can be captured by one person in the same time budget that separate teams used to do it for.
Well, I think that it's obviously my responsibility to illustrate or to make it clear to clients what is possible. And yes, although you have the possibility for doing everything, I would illustrate what I've just shown to you to my client, that you need to work differently. The way I can move when I'm shooting video is completely different to how I would do it if I was shooting stills. So yeah, if you want both, then it has to come in the planning stage. So it's incumbent on the client to then allow more time, obviously more budget, because you have different types of post involved. And I think it depends on your client, but if you want both things done, then it needs to be obvious to them. It needs to be made obvious to them. And that's my job, to make it obvious to them that it does require a lot more, but it is possible. But and if it's not, if you have a finite amount of time, then we have to bring in another person, another photographer using the similar gear. We're working together, build a team, and then achieve the same results in that finite amount of time. So I hope that makes some sense.
That's great, yeah. Because I'm thinking about the collaboration side of this and the opportunities. You talked a little bit about at the end there, mentioning sort of how things like lectures or theatres can use this opportunity really to get more content out there in different ways, and presumably collaborating is one way of enabling that, is working with other photographers and other filmmakers. Is that
I think there's a lot of universities are already putting content online. I work with Birkbeck, and I think that they've in London, and they've been doing that for a long time. But with another client, I not Birkbeck, I had to use some similar footage that they supplied to me for a production, and the quality was, it was purely perfunctory. It was basically audio. The picture was just, 80% the back of people's heads in dark in a lecture hall. Yeah. So if you want to use that sort of in an art, or see the artistic merit, then it's worth bringing in somebody like myself to do something different. I think to sort of to care about it more.
Yeah. I've got, if anybody on Facebook wants to add questions, please do. I've got one coming through here on Facebook from Anthony. It says, thanks for sharing, Paul, great work. It looks like you've made a lot of investment in your studio equipment. How long did it take you to get to the point where you can now offer stills and video capabilities?
Yeah, it's not overnight, obviously. It does take time. And I started out with a stills kit, and then they add the feature of video, so that becomes a possibility. And I think the first things I bought, like, I still haven't bought a dedicated film tripod. This is still my photography tripod, which I'm quite happy with, and I still use it. I don't plan on buying a dedicated film tripod at the moment. So it's definitely been an incremental thing as I've seen, as I've put money to one side to make an investment. I've done it slowly, and it's taken about taken years to do, 5, 6, 7 years, and it's slowly. I'm trying to concentrate on one thing. The slider was one of the first things. The gimbal came in later. Additional lenses came in later, and just trying out different things. You obviously can rent things to begin with, but I do prefer where possible to own my own stuff. Yeah.
And also, as well as the actual equipment itself, there's also the technology, the different software you're now having to use and things, and the time that takes to learn how to use new tech. So how much has that impacted on what you're doing? Is that another slow process, or are you finding
yeah, that's definitely been a slow process. Starting out with getting a handle on like syncing audio with picture, and not even doing anything to do with motion graphics, just getting simple, reliable footage created. That's how I had to start out. But I was offering a more simpler end result then. As I've become more comfortable with it and more proficient at things like Premiere, which is the editing software, I've then slowly begun to add more bits of motion graphics in there. And I'm by no means like a professional motion graphics person, but what I do, I think, you know, it does make an interest, it does make an impact, and it's something that I've, you know, time has allowed me to slowly get into that, because it's all self-led development. But yeah.
Great. I don't know whether anybody else on the Zoom meeting has any additional questions they want to come in with, or also the people on Facebook. Just to let you know, Facebook's got about 5-second delay on what we're actually seeing live. So sometimes I ask a question and we've got to appreciate they're hearing it a little bit after we're talking about it. So if anybody on Facebook wants to add any questions, please do. I'm just looking through my notes. I've written down some notes, but also quite interesting, I'd written down questions, and the questions, I think we've all been asking very similar questions, thinking about, I mean, it was interesting what you're saying about how the challenges that lockdown has brought. I mean, there are lots of photographers I know who are, that their world has changed dramatically over the last 8-10 weeks, that, you know, suddenly you cannot get out there and do your job the way you were doing it. And what have, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit already, but what have you been using this time to do, and what has this, you know, you've already said it, you've seen some positive things coming out of it. What, you know, how's that been for you, and what are your
I mean,
learning?
I have had some editing work. It's not a lot. It's not, you know, life-changing amounts, but it's certainly helped, and it's given me the chance to sort of add more sort of glitter to what we're working on. If you're dealing with sort of less than ideal footage, you know, if people are filming at home on a webcam, it's not going to be, you know, a professional necessarily. So you might want to just help that out a bit. But I've been sort of concentrating on making the most out of those projects to help out clients. But then the whole idea about the streaming and the idea of a sort of a workflow, and I've been having to call upon contacts who know about this, people that work in theatre and stuff, that are using software that takes charge of lighting cues in theatres, and you can use that to control multiple cameras and different assets, kind of like what we're doing on Zoom, adding in video footage or stills, but it's kind of a package that you can create that you can use on cross-platform.
Yeah.
So you could take that to YouTube or wherever else that's offering live streaming functionality. And if they don't have all of the same functionality, you can just use it on your platform. It sort of gets recognized as a USB camera, and then you have a control panel, and you can sort of have all that functionality there. So that's kind of what I think is, you know, it could become a useful tool for photographers going forward. You know, the extra, you know, the extra role that you can play that can help you out in times like these.
Great.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end of our time. I haven't had any new questions pop up on the Zoom group or on Facebook. I just want to check if anybody on the Zoom group did want to ask anything else before I suddenly stop them, because often I find I start to wrap up and I said, oh, I've got a great question. So I'll just give you another second there. Yeah. Nothing's coming in. So I think therefore we ought to wrap up, because we're getting to that 10:45 time. But yeah, thank you so much, Paul. That was really interesting. I'm sure those of us on Zoom will stay on, but we'll finish Facebook in a moment. I'm just going to bring my camera back up so you can see me. Bear with me. So I can just finish off. And again, a big thank you there to Paul, who's rounded off our Tech Week very nicely there with thinking about photography and the technology, that changes that have happened, and how lockdown is affecting it as well. Really interesting, and something that I think we're all thinking about what's the future going to hold for us all in our different industries. Just to say thank you before we head off Facebook. It's been really interesting. I can see quite a few people are saying thank you on the Facebook feed as well. So yeah, thanks to everybody on Facebook for joining us. We're gonna end our live Facebook feed now, and we'll see you at more events in the future. Thank you.